Welcome to our executive interview series at the FedScoop Federal Forum, sponsored by Workday. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and we're here with Brittany Larson, Workday Federal Leader at Deloitte Consulting. Brittany, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wyatt.
First, I'd like to ask, how can agencies leverage responsible AI when it comes to workforce planning and career development?
It's a good question, and I think there are several factors to it. So the first thing is agencies are going to have to understand the potential impacts of deploying AI and then apply their talent strategies according to the understanding of those impacts, as opposed to the other way around. We don't want to create a talent strategy and then try to cram AI into it. We know Gen AI is going to bring disruption to workers, but it's going to be on a spectrum across different agencies and different organizations, and it depends from a worker perspective on what their daily tasks are. In a review of almost 500 different federal occupations, for example, Deloitte actually found that 33% on average of daily tasks could be performed by AI. 28% of daily tasks probably require some AI and some human interaction, and then the remainder is just human-centered work. And so we know work is going to evolve. We know daily tasks will evolve as those things start to improve. Skills will also then need to be thought about. So we should expect a rise in skill needs and things like deep data analysis or the human-centered items, right? Like creativity, flexibility, deep critical thinking. And then if we think about skills like, for example, perhaps word-based copy editing, we know that Gen AI is developing really strong capability in that sense. And so that may be a place where we see a decrease among the need or in the need for those skills among workers. So when we think about workforce planning and career development, we want to think about both elements, right? The technical skills, and then how do they blend with the human side? If you want to responsibly harness the technology, it's critical to think carefully about the impact and the way to optimize the human side of the shift, not just the implications on data and technology. So we'll think about our workforce on a spectrum of AI literacy and fluency. The shift of work in agencies, regardless, will require at least a minimum kind of understanding of AI, basic interaction, and that's sort of our AI literacy component. So maybe we'll think about something like, how do I interact with a basic AI tool that exists to help me streamline my email messaging? It's built into tools I use every day, but it just helps me do something maybe a little bit more effectively or efficiently. That might be something that's an AI literacy example. But then when I think about more technical roles that require development or innovation, and they're going to be supported by more complex AI tools, we're also going to need to be looking at a more in-depth AI training to lead to that overall AI fluency. So using kind of the idea then would be you take an organization-wide competency-based skills assessment. You can look at all of the roles in your organization, you review them, and then you re-architect them based on the needs of the organization, the skills that exist, and the skills that are still needed to help your organization or your agency adopt AI. You should strategically plan for upskilling or reskilling in places where some of those tasks might be more AI focused. And then identify also, in terms of a talent management plan, where do we have gaps that we can't fill internally or we can't fill with training, and that's going to help inform our recruiting strategy. What does this really mean? At Deloitte, we've helped organizations for years navigate change, right? It might be process-based change. It might be technology-based change. It might be ways of working. And we've come up with kind of three major tenets that have helped organizations navigate those changes, and they'll apply to AI as well. The first one is leadership has to agree about how AI will impact your organization. You have to have a common vision among your leaders, and you need to share that vision with your organization, with your team, with your employees, to make it so that they understand that, number one, you believe in this transition, and number two, they should join you on the journey. Then you go through that role-based assessment, because what you need to know is, how do your employees help you achieve that vision? And that assessment is basically going to come down to three questions. Who is going to interact with AI? When are they going to interact with AI? And what are the interactions that need to happen? And that helps inform the third piece, the third tenet that's always critical, which is how do we help our employees understand what this work is. So it's the learning and training component. And the most successful folks that we see navigate these things in other areas will be the same way that they'll be successful with AI. A combination of a variety of learning and training, an emphasis on collaboration within learning, and probably most importantly in this instance, the opportunity for hands-on practice. We know that practice makes progress, and we know that folks are much more comfortable incorporating new elements into their daily tasks if they have the opportunity to practice them in real time first, in real world situations, without having to then apply them to something that is actually mission critical on day one. So using those three tenets, those kind of will help organizations be set up to deploy AI in a responsible and agile and effective manner.
Thanks for outlining that. It's an effective roadmap. And then next, just as a follow, how can leaders leverage things like real-time data and sentiment analysis within a talent management system to develop highly functioning teams within their organization?
Both of those factors are really helpful in terms of rapidly developing a more effective team, whether it's a new leader with a new team or a team that has been working together for quite a while. So let's start with real-time data. Real-time data is a game changer. It allows you to be substantially more adaptable. Leaders can react more quickly to shifts in the market, to a change in internal team dynamics. You bring someone new in, someone leaves your team, and you can identify gaps and strengths more quickly using a constant and continuous flow of analysis of how things are going. I think there's two sides to that, right? I think most commonly when we think about real-time performance data about where are we seeing opportunities for upskilling or reskilling, but equally as important, it helps to identify untapped strengths among team members and whether there is a gap somewhere else or you're looking to maybe take your team to the next level. If you have the opportunity to identify those strengths, you actually are able to become increasingly agile and efficient in the face of change and sometimes get out ahead of it. Another key benefit that's maybe a little bit obvious, but if you are incorporating real-time data into your performance, into sort of your performance cycle, we don't wait a whole year for a performance review to come around before we make a recommendation for change or an opportunity for improvement. It allows people to pivot on the fly and continuously improve throughout the year. And really, it also then reduces those surprises that maybe we saw in a traditional annual cycle of performance. And then finally, with workforce planning, that evaluation of current capabilities and assessments, you can be a little bit more thoughtful about what skills are needed next year, the year after, and think about, going back to some of the conversations we've had about AI, how do I think about the skills that will be needed because I already know what skills exist today, and then what are the tasks that AI will take on so that I can then be thinking about what skills will be needed in the future. If we think about sentiment analysis, this is a little bit more about understanding how employees engage with an organization. And there's a little bit of a nuance here between the idea of quantitative analysis and sentiment analysis. So quantitative might be something like a survey, an employee survey, or the rollout of some results, something that's tangible in a data perspective. And then sentiment analysis is something more like an action plan that's based on those results. Tailored plans for leadership, or the identification of pain points or root causes of something like a lack of recognition in an organization, so we can continue to improve the way that employees engage with an organization. We're seeing an increase in the last 5 to 10 years of this sentiment analysis, particularly in sort of an informal way, coffee chats, employee sensing sessions, things like that leaders will use that they then take back to their performance plans in a more data-driven way because they have tangible information to work from that they've gathered directly from their employees in terms of engagement. We help leaders do this at Deloitte pretty frequently, using both our tools and then existing tools that exist in the government, right? So for example, we recently helped a large government agency use the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, and they took a look at that from a perspective of areas of opportunity But then they crafted focused employee sensing sessions based on that survey and are using the outcomes of those sensing sessions to inform their leadership action plans. Then we can fold Gen AI into this with things like natural language processing. How do employees engage on a written level? What are the additional layers of understanding that we can gain about employee engagement on a more written perspective or from a more written perspective? And that just gives us another layer of data that we can use. But it is important to recognize that the Gen AI tools on their own can't replace the interactive portions. It can't replace the gathering of feedback or the sentiment analysis portions of a sensing. It's more meant to be, it's more of an and rather than an or. And then that the quantitative continues to be important, right? There's a tilt towards the sentiment analysis, but we need to also maintain the use of that quantitative aspect because that's how we will see progress or identify upward or downward facing trends over time. So using the synergy that you can see between the real-time data and the sentiment analysis allows a more comprehensive understanding of team dynamics, of organizational engagement, and really helps you ultimately develop a more effective, more highly functioning, more efficient team over the space of time.
Well, Brittany Larson, thank you for sharing those detailed perspectives. Really appreciate that, and for joining us here at the FedScoop Federal Forum.
Thanks for having me, Wyatt. I appreciate it.